We are back taking up public hearing number 1, which is a legislative public hearing to consider transmittal of Comprehensive Plan Amendment 21-11 Waterside text, a text amendment. And I want to remind commissioners, this is a legislative public hearing, not quasi-judicial. So we have some more discretion. Staff, Ms. Nobby, are you leading us off here?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Jenna Nobby, Senior Planner with the Growth Management Department. And before you this afternoon is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 21-11, the Waterside Text Amendment. This is requested by Lucido and Associates on behalf of the owner, Canner 96th Street Investments, LLC, and South Florida Gateway Industrial, LLC. And before we get into the specifics of this text amendment, I'm going to turn it over to Clyde, who will do some background and history for this project.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Clyde Doolin, your Comprehensive Planning Administrator. This property has some history. We're going to consider a site-specific text amendment here. Ms. Nobby is going to go into the staff report. Before we even get into these slides that you see on the screen, this property, can you go ahead, has some history to it before the Waterside Plan Amendment was filed in 2021. There were two plan amendments that preceded. The site-specific text amendment that we're going to talk about today is applicable, but before this, there was a future land use map amendment and an expansion of the primary urban service district to cover that area you see in blue and in yellow. The blue is commercial waterfront, the yellow was industrial, and that was done in 2010. Then in 2019, the industrial and the commercial waterfront were taken off, and industrial was assigned to this area here on the closer to Canner Highway. This was a total 499 acres that was formerly known as the Neal property. And then the land use was swapped out and the industrial was moved over here and a freestanding industrial urban service district was created. And it looked like this. Then following that, there were some additional changes, and Ms. Nobby, would you go back to your slide deck? And the proposed text amendment and future land use map amendment we're here to talk about here in the next couple of public hearings started in 2021. And you see the proposed change to from the agricultural to the low density residential that wrapped around here and the text amendment that was proposed to be applicable to that. The amendments at that time in 2021 did not include any of this property that you see here where my cursor is. And then, let's see. The applicant proposed to change the industrial and rearrange the freestanding urban service district. As you can see, it stayed 250 acres, but it was rearranged some, which caused the proposed residential around it and all the text amendments concurrent to change to look more like this. And as you can see, there was a lot of overlap. They didn't all fit together. The puzzle pieces didn't fit together real well because of the changes that were going on, as you can see in 2023. Then in 2024, things all got into alignment so that the land uses and between the industrial and the residential were all lined up with each other. And so the 2024 submittal straightened all that out. And we're now coming forward today to talk to you about a text amendment that's applicable to those properties on the screen as you see for the area in orange wrapped around the industrial, and including the industrial as far as the change to the primary urban service district. So that's just a little bit of background and a little history taking you from 2009 up through today in 2024.
So in this text amendment request, there are numerous amendments to chapters 1, 2, 4, and 11 of the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. This text amendment is concurrent with a future land use or FLUME amendment to the property that is outlined in red here and has that orange designation, and that is CPA 21-12 Waterside FLUME. So because there are a lot of moving pieces, if you will, and moving parts to This text amendment, to make it easier to explain and to understand, we've broken it into 3 different categories or components, and we'll go into each of those. So the first are site-specific policies that are applicable to the proposed residential land. The second is the expansion of the primary urban service district and the subsequent elimination of the freestanding urban service district. And the third component are amendments to the residential capacity analysis methodology. And in addition to the text and policies and sections of the comp plan that are proposed for amendment, there are 3 figures as well and proposed for amendment, and those are figures 4-2, Urban Service District, figure 11-1, areas currently served by regional utilities, and figure 11-2, potential service areas. So this is an aerial location map of the subject properties. Outlined in red is the waterside property. It's about 396 acres, and this has the proposed residential use on it. And then next to it, outlined in yellow, is about 250 acres of land with an industrial future land use designation. This is within the freestanding urban service district. And so you can generally see that this property in its totality is located south of Southwest 96th Street, west of Southwest Canner Highway, west of Southwest Pratt Whitney Road, and there's a small frontage of the waterside property that is adjacent to the St. Lucie Canal. So this is the existing future land use map of both of these properties. The waterside property currently has an agricultural future land use. And then the proposed future land use that you'll hear in the next public hearing has the land use proposed for low-density residential. And this is just to give some context for the existing conditions on the property. So moving into the site-specific policies, there are amendments to Policy 4.1B2 in Chapter 4 that are specific to the proposed residential land. That's the subject of the concurrent Flume amendment. And so there are 4 subsections that are proposed for addition in this policy. The first is that the residential unit shall be limited to a maximum of 1,050 units. The second is prior to the issuance of the 100th building permit, a monetary contribution of $1,000 per residential unit shall be donated to the Martin County Community Land Trust. The third is that all future applications for development approval shall be processed as a planned unit development, or PUD. And the fourth is that the owner-developer shall plan and appropriately fund public facilities consistent with Policy 14.1B2, which requires that future developments pay the full cost of capital facilities needed to address the impacts of such development. The second component of this text amendment request is the expansion of the primary urban service district. This proposed expansion covers approximately 646 acres. That's because it involves the 396 acres of proposed residential land and the adjacent 250 acres of industrial. And so with that expansion also covering the industrial, there's that land would be converted from the freestanding urban service district designation to become part of the primary if the primary is expanded over that property. So in order to make sure everything is consistent and there's no internal inconsistencies in that regard, there are 4 policies listed here in Chapter 4 that would remove reference to the freestanding urban service district if this land were to become part of the primary urban service district. And to depict that expansion of the primary, there are amendments to figures 4-2, 11-1, and 11-2 that would show this expansion of the primary urban service district. This is an excerpt of the proposed figure 4-2, which is the urban service district's map. The pink color on this figure denotes the primary urban service district designation. The purple color here where my cursor is the secondary urban service district. So in this exhibit, the red outlined property, that's proposed residential, and the black outlined property, that's the industrial, would all become part of the primary with this proposed amendment. And I just wanted to clarify for the record as well that where my cursor is circling right here, there are 5 lots that are south of Southwest 96th Street that in this figure show that they have that pink color, they would be part of the primary, but they are currently not part of the primary urban service district, and they are not part of this amendment. So I just wanted to clarify that, that prior to adoption or transmittal, that pink color would need to be removed from those lots. This is the proposed figure 11-1. The blue boundary designates the primary urban service district, and this warmer brown color denotes the same. So with the proposed amendment to this figure, these two properties in their entirety would become part of this blue outline and become part of the primary urban service district with that designation and that brown color as well. And a very similar amendment to the proposed figure 11-2. The blue outline denotes the primary and that brown color as well. So these properties are proposed to be part of that. Policy 4.7A7 in Chapter 4 provides 8 criteria that the board must analyze anytime there is a proposed expansion of the primary urban service district. Staff did analyze these criteria during our review of these application materials, and we concluded that compliance with criteria 1, 2, and 5 had not been met by this application. Criteria 1 states that the application will not create any internal inconsistency with other elements of the adopted comprehensive growth management plan. Number 2 is will not result in incompatibilities with adjacent land uses. And number 5 is demonstrate that reasonable capacity does not exist on suitable land in the existing primary urban service district for the 20-year planning period. And the third and final component of this text amendment application are amendments to the methodology for the residential capacity analysis. These amendments proposed by the applicant span 3 different chapters of the comp plan. It's chapters 1, 2, and 4. So we've listed the sections of text and policies that are proposed for addition here. In Chapter 1, there's 4 different sections. In Chapter 2, there are new definitions added and existing definitions proposed for amendment. And then in Chapter 4, there are 7 policies and sections proposed. So these are pretty complicated and complex amendments. We didn't want to go into too nitty-gritty detail here, but if you have any specific questions on those, we can certainly address those. And in conclusion, staff recommends denial of the applicant's proposed text amendments. The basis for staff's recommendation is that compliance with policy 4.7A7, subsections 1, 2, and 5 have not been demonstrated for expansion of the primary urban service district. The proposed amendments to sections and policies in chapters 1 and 4 are not clear. Until a methodology is applied and words describing calculations become calculations, it is unclear the result. And elements of the proposed amendments to the Population Technical Bulletin and the Residential Capacity Analysis methodology would likely result in multiple internal inconsistencies within the text of the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Members of the board, if I could add one more item, I forgot to mention in the intro. Before you can consider an expansion of the primary urban service district, the plan policy requires that the residential capacity analysis be updated. And as you may remember, we presented an update to the residential capacity analysis for your consideration and adoption, and that has been done, and it is included in your package. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Nobby or Mr. Doolin? Applicant.
Good afternoon, Tyson Waters from the law firm of Fox McCluskey here on behalf of the applicant, Cantor 96th Street Investments. I want to thank staff for giving a nice overview. And as they mentioned, we're here today for actually 2 applications, the first being a text amendment, and then the second being a future land use amendment request to change the agricultural land use to low-density residential. The text amendment is broken into 3 parts. The first part is this what we believe are revisions to a flawed residential capacity analysis. So our efforts here today are to improve that and to correct it so you have a more succinct and accurate capacity analysis. Second is the proposal to incorporate 396 acres into the primary urban service district and convert the freestanding industrial part into the primary urban service district as well. And then third is the sub-area policy to regulate future development on those 396 acres. We have submitted affidavits from 2 of our consultants to be part of the record. If you need hard copies, we have those with us today, as well as those consultants are here should you have any questions at the end of our presentation. And then finally, as mentioned, the next agenda item is this future land use amendment to convert the agricultural land to low-density residential. And I think we understand, and staff may be able to stipulate as well, that that future land use amendment to convert the land to low-density residential is in fact contingent upon the approval of at least a portion of this text amendment. And so with all that overview and housekeeping, I'd like to ask Morris Crady to come to the podium to provide the presentation for you.
Thank you, Tyson. Again, for the record, my name is Morris Crady, and a little bit of my background. I'm senior partners with Lucido and Associates. I was the county staff planner for 10 years, from 1982 till 1990. And then I've been on the outside working as a professional land planner almost exclusively in Martin County for the past 43 years. And started work in Martin County on April 1st, 1982, the day the first comprehensive plan was adopted, and worked for the following 8 years creating implementation policies for the comprehensive plan. And then I'm going to go through some of the issues and contentions that I have with the county's staff report. We do have a lot of areas of agreement, but we also have some disagreement, and I obviously disagree with their recommendation of denial, and I'll go over those reasons. Then following my presentation, we have Laura Smith with GAI Consultants, who worked long and hard on preparing a residential capacity analysis we believe is a fair representation of what's left in Martin County and based on current best management practices and Florida statutes. But first, I think location is everything in this particular application, and I want to make sure everyone is clear on the location. I think staff did a great job of explaining some of the background and history of the property, but we're talking about Waterside PUD. This is the 396 acres that's surrounded in green. You can see all of this property has been impacted by previous agricultural activity. There's no sensitive wetlands, no sensitive upland habitat on the site. There are the headwaters of Roebuck Creek that run through this area right here, and that is a critical flowway for Martin County, and we believe our application better protects that flowway. But we also are adjacent across the street on 96th Street. This is St. Lucie Falls, which is a mobile home park at 8 units per acre. This is River Forest and River Marina, which are, again, I think their density is 8 to 10 units per acre. This is a commercial marina. I think the county just recently approved some type of activity here to allow barge activity to be loaded here. And then over on this side, we have Crystal Lake Elementary School. There's a store-away facility on this corner. There's the convenience store gas station on this corner. This corner was approved for a public shopping center. It has not been built yet. I think they're waiting on additional housetops before they pull the trigger, but there is a need out there now for a shopping center. And this area here is not included. We'll go in that in a little more detail, but this is the South Florida Gateway Industrial Park. It includes South Florida Gateway. It includes the 30 acres of the county industrial site in this location. And it includes Southwest Gateway Place, which is a signalized intersection at this location, Southwest Neal Street, and Southwest Waterside Way, which the county is building to provide access to their 30-acre facility. This is the existing land use map, as was mentioned. This is estate density land use here. This is commercial limited and general commercial location here. Again, Southwest 96th Street. This is agricultural ranchette that's located between the primary urban service district and the freestanding urban service district. And these are the 6 single-family lots that somehow ended up with agricultural land use, even though the lots are only 2 acres in size, that are located adjacent to the 396 acres. And then again, what we've shown here is the rural lifestyle land use that supports the Three Lakes PUD. And to give you a little more context, this is the actual map of the urban service district, the existing urban service districts. We're bounded on this side by the primary urban service district, almost a mile of frontage, and also on this end by the freestanding urban service district, which is this right here. So We're surrounded by the freestanding and primary urban service district on about 60% of our site. And the rural lifestyle is important because it was created to kind of contain the urban boundary, and we know that these projects are legacy projects. They're not going anywhere, so it will prevent any attempt to increase the urban boundary beyond this particular point. And this 200 acres here was recently purchased by the owners of Apogee and will hopefully be added to rural lifestyle sometime in the future. And then along the west is the St. Lucie Canal. This is a map of Martin County utilities, and blue here is the Martin County service area within the primary urban service district, and blue here is the Martin County utility service area within the freestanding urban service district. Along the roadway on Canner Highway, there's water and sewer lines available. Along 96th Street, there's water and sewer lines that are constructed within the project South Florida Gateway. There's water and sewer lines, and so this site is completely surrounded by Martin County utilities and their service areas. And this is another graphic that shows how much we're surrounded by uses other than agriculture. We're surrounded by existing residential uses in blue. We're surrounded by developed industrial uses in this location, by vacant industrial uses at this location, rural lifestyle along this edge, the St. Lucie Canal here, and this is commercial frontage in this location. So we're only about 3,300 feet is actually bordered by agricultural lands, and those lands have been acquired by Three Lakes for addition to their project in the future. These are agricultural lands, but you can see they're not being used for agriculture. They're used for single-family home sites. They have water and sewer in front of them. I think it's a travesty that the county hasn't included these properties in the urban boundary and given their ability to utilize water and sewer, because their septic tanks discharge directly into the headwaters of Roebuck Creek. So all of these properties should be on water and sewer just by their proximity to the urban boundary. So the total site area, as was mentioned, in the 396 acres that we want to change from agriculture to low density and add to the urban service district, it's bounded by almost 88% on its borders by non-agricultural uses. It's only bound by 12% on the one border to the south, and that use is in pasture land. There's no active agriculture on any of these properties surrounding the property. We're adjacent to the urban service districts on about 60% of our boundary. We're currently agriculture. We are requesting low density, but we're willing to set the cap on that density at 2.65 units per acre instead of the 5 units per acre that's usually allowed. And I just want to mention that we're not urban sprawl under any definition. If you go to Florida statutes, they have ag enclave standards, which provide that any property that is surrounded by more than 75% non-agricultural uses is deemed an ag enclave and therefore cannot be considered urban sprawl. So we're essentially an infill property within the urban service boundary that's designated for agricultural use. We're adding 646 acres to the primary urban service district, but that includes the 396 acres within the Canner 96 investment property and 250 acres in the counties in the existing freestanding urban service district, which includes 216 acres of South Florida Gateway. The Martin County industrial site's about 29 acres, and the Waterside Way public right-of-way is 5 acres. So that's the land that will be converted to urban uses. Again, this is the existing urban boundary. This is what we think it should go to. And again, these properties, the county should be proactive and include these properties within the primary urban service district and get them off of a well and septic tank as soon as possible. That would be the right thing to do. But I do want to go back about 15 years ago. This is the existing land use, but this was the land use in 2010. I didn't get involved with the Neal family until 2018. And apparently the commission did this in 2010 in response to the recession. There was an attempt to create some economic activity, and there was the thought that the waterfront use could be developed and this could become industrial and the waterfront would play into the St. Lucie Canal and all that. But when I got involved in 2018 with Nancy Neal, she has tried for 10 years to get something to be done on this property, and no one was interested. One, because there's a 16-acre perpetual Army Corps easement that runs from 96th Street all the way to our frontage that prevents any permanent buildings on our property. So when I came in 2018 to fix this problem, what we decided to do, and the county agreed, was to move this 175 acres of industrial, 75 acres of waterfront commercial that couldn't be used to the frontage along Canner Highway, because all of the people that Nancy had talked to wanted the frontage on Canner Highway. That's where the industry wanted to be, and that's what we worked for a few years to remove the commercial waterfront and the industrial and relocate it at this location. But I want to mention, though, that this was part of the primary urban service district. This 250 acres in 2010 was part of the primary urban service district. We couldn't just move it over to the 250 acres here because we had this parcel which is outside the primary urban service district. So the only reason we created a freestanding urban service district was because the county was not willing to include these agricultural ranchettes into the primary urban service district, and we can't have a primary urban service district that's disconnected from another primary urban service district. That's how the freestanding urban service district got there. It's been extremely successful. You know what happened over, as soon as we made that move, we were able to develop what's out there today, and it's has the potential of employing 400 to 500 people in South Florida Gateway. The county parcel has the potential to employ 200 to 300 people. Apogee and the ranch project to the south, there's another 500 people that could be employed. So again, we see this site as an infill residential site that could accommodate the needs of housing in this particular area. We went through the three purposes of the text amendment. We're trying to amend the residential capacity and population estimate methodology to make it realistic and reasonable, and we'll go over that in a moment in a little more detail. We're converting the 250 acres of the freestanding urban service district to primary urban service district, and we're converting the 396 acres of agricultural use to primary urban service district and restricting that density to no more than 2.65 units per acre. So again, this is how figure 4-2 looks currently. We're simply trying to fill in the gap here. It would not include those out parcels, and I'll get to that in a moment. This is the actual language that we're proposing within the text amendment to restrict the uses on the 396 acres, again, to 1,050 units. We're willing to pay $1,000 per residential units, or over $1 million to help the county with affordable housing projects, and we're willing to contribute that money to the Martin County Community Land Trust, since they've seemed to have taken the lead on affordable housing. And probably the most, well, two, that we're also willing to do any future project as a plan unit development so the county can negotiate public benefits with the developer. But most importantly, what we're committed to is item D, that the owner developer is going to pay the full cost of the capacity needed to fund this project. We're not putting any of that liability on the county taxpayers or on the county government. We've committed to pay for, if there's road capacity needed, then for this project, then on 96th Street, then the developer will pay for that. If there's water and sewer extensions that need to be made to facilitate this project, the developer will pay for that. We've already been in conversations with the county utilities department. They would love to have well sites on this property to increase their capacity for water treatment. So there's nothing that the county taxpayers would be liable for in this particular case. Now, there are criteria. I mean, the comp plan was never intended to stop growth when you fill up the urban service district. There are specific criteria that allow the expansion of the urban service district, and these are policy decisions that the board has to make at some time in the future. If not now, then it's going to creep up very quickly. But staff agrees with all of our responses to all but 3 of the 8 criteria, and I'm going to go through those quickly. The first one is internal inconsistency with other elements of the adopted comprehensive plan, where we're changing the policies in the comprehensive plan regarding residential capacity because we think they are flawed. And I'll tell you in a moment why we think they're flawed. But so we're not going to be consistent with the existing policies that deal with population or residential capacity. We have removed any duplicative policies. We've updated the policies, as staff mentioned, in all the sections where there were conflicts with the freestanding urban service district or with the services in the area. So we believe that issue has been resolved. The other reason for the staff's determination of consistency is it's unclear how industrial traffic from the adjacent industrial lands would be restricted. Now, when we changed the location of those industrial lands from the canal to the Canner Highway, one of the reasons we did that is because the people that live on 96th Street did not want, let me see if I have it, yeah. When we made this change, one of the reasons we couldn't develop to begin with was because the access was limited to 96th Street, and none of these people want industrial traffic on 96th Street. So we self-imposed a policy into the text of the amendment that prevented any of our industrial traffic from ever being able to use 96th Street. And we did that by building roads. Gateway Place, Neal Street, Waterside Way, these are all interconnected. There is really no basis for the county to assume that this would create a conflict with this policy. We're not changing that sub-area policy plan. We're still going to restrict, we don't want industrial traffic on 96th Street any more than the people on 96th Street want industrial traffic. So there's no basis for the staff assuming there's some kind of consistency issue with this particular policy that we self-imposed on ourselves. There's no traffic that can be, or no industrial traffic through a PUD design. We can prevent industrial traffic from accessing 96th Street with no problem whatsoever. The other criteria that staff disagrees with is that we would create incompatibilities with adjacent land uses. Now, they do admit that a PUD may be used to ensure compatibility is considered during site plan design and site plan approval process, and we've done that with PUDs. We can create buffers, we can create lakes, and in fact, we created this whole industrial PUD with the thought of having residential in the back. So we have significant buffers on the county's property that they purchased. On our property, we've created lakes and other physical barriers between what we would hope to be future residential land in the back. And so we don't think there's any issue with the industrial land or the adjacent agricultural land. Now, the county is concerned about an enclave being created by the single-family lots that are within the agricultural areas on 96th Street and on Canner Highway. And again, these are the parcels that they're talking about. These parcels are 2-acre lots, single-family. They're adjacent to water and sewer lines. They should be put inside the urban service district just because of good planning, proactive planning. Same with these parcels. They're already agricultural enclaves. We're an agricultural enclave. We're trying to fix that with this application, and we can also fix these parcels. The single-family lots along 90th Street, they're not agricultural uses, and they're adjacent to water and sewer. They should be entitled to the same services that someone lives across the street from them are entitled to, whether it's fire, police protection, water and sewer. They're right across the street. They should not be ignored. And in fact, there's a policy in your comprehensive plan today that allow the primary urban service district boundaries to be extended a maximum of 660 feet without a comprehensive plan amendment. You can do that today. You can take care of those lots and put them on water and sewer today without a comp plan amendment. That would be a proactive reaction to allowing those parcels to continue to use well and septic tanks right at the headwaters of Roebuck Creek. And again, the PUD process will ensure compatibility. It will provide public benefits that will deal with some of these adjacent properties and help them get off water and sewer and onto get off of well and septic and onto water and sewer. Again, this is what we would like to see, and the county has the right to bring these parcels into the primary urban service district, provide them with the same level of service that everybody around them gets, including water and sewer. Without a comp plan amendment, you can do that today. Now, the county staff does agree that we will not adversely impact environmental, natural, historical, or archaeological resources. So we're in agreement. This is the right location from an environmental perspective, and there's no argument there. And we're also in agreement that we're consistent with Goal 4.9 related to appropriate residential land use capacities. By putting low-density residential on this property, you allow a variety of housing types, not just single-family. You can do townhomes, you can do apartments under the PUD. You can do whatever is needed in the area to support the surrounding employment centers. Staff agrees that we do have the ability with this land use to provide residential housing consistent with Goal 4.9. So there's no disagreement with that. Probably the biggest disagreement is with Policy 5 or Criteria 5 that requires us to demonstrate that reasonable capacity exists. And I'm highlighted reasonable capacity because staff just read the first sentence. They didn't read the second sentence, and I'll go into that in more detail in a moment. But you've got to understand that reasonable means available for development from the standpoint of environmental concerns, efficient use and expansion of public facilities and services, or availability of development sites in relationship to the projected needs of the population. We evaluated that second part. Staff did not. They only looked at the numbers. But we also provided a residential capacity. In our study, we showed that there's only 64% capacity for the 15-year period. Now, Laura's going to go into the fact that she did extend that out for the 20 years per the county's change to the EAR amendment. So it gets worse in 5 years, as the updated residential capacity that was presented by Metro Forecasting showed. But again, we believe our residential capacity is an accurate representation of where the county is today and where they will be in 10 years and in 20 years. Now, the county did update the residential capacity, and it was well, actually, first of all, they denied the application based on the December 2023 residential capacity, which showed you had 237% of the projected demand through 2035. So they concluded that there is sufficient supply for the 10-year and 15-year primary urban service district, and there was no need to expand the district at this time. Now, they did update that. 2 weeks ago, on November 4th, David Farmer, while I was here, presented his analysis that showed that the unincorporated areas of the Eastern Primary Urban Service District had capacity for 148%. So that 237% went down rather significantly to 148%. But that takes the projected demand out through 2045, because you had to go out 20 years from 2025 based on the EAR amendment. But that shows a significant reduction in capacity. But it also concludes that the capacity in the secondary urban service district falls to 68% of the projected demand in 2045. So even under the county's revised residential capacity analysis, according to your policy 4-1D6, that when either the primary urban service district or the secondary urban service district fails to meet the capacity demands for the 10-year population projected, then the county is required to expand capacity. I didn't make that up. That's in your policy, and you've proven with your own residential capacity that we're falling below 100% of the demand in the secondary urban service district. But that's only the minor problem. What the county staff didn't analyze, and what I think you've got to really look at seriously, is what is really available for development. And when the comprehensive plan defines reasonable capacity, it's looking at environmental concerns, It's looking at efficient use and expansion of public facilities and services. It's looking at availability of development sites in relationship to the projected needs of the population. The county staff did not do that analysis. They did not look at what is reasonable capacity. They just looked at the unit count. You know, we went further and we looked at what is reasonable. We have demonstrated, and the county staff concerns, at least on this piece of property, that there is no environmental concerns on this piece of property. We demonstrated, and the county staff concerns, that if you were going to expand public facilities and services, which is probably a good site, because we have water and sewer services all the way around the property, it's surrounded by the property. So it does make sense. We're across the street from urban services and facilities. And again, the county must look at the availability of development sites in relationship to the projected needs of the population. We know we've created employment opportunities on this site. We know there's 1,000 jobs to be generated over the next 5 years. The county staff concurs that the waterside property, and this is a quote, is suitable based upon the location adjacent to the primary urban service district and proximity to employment, cultural centers, fire and police protection, and the avoidance of adverse impacts to natural resources. They agree, and we know that. Now, going to the county, back to the county's residential capacity analysis, there's sites. I know the sites. I've worked here for 40 years. I know what's left. I work with developers every day, and they go through the same parcel over and over again because there's significant constraints with what's left in the county's urban service. This is just one example. A 40-acre site looks like a great infill site. It's right there behind the Treasure Coast Mall, north of Britt Road. It happens to be right in the direct area of a flowway that runs from West Jensen, then feeds all of the drainage from the mall down to what this is called Brick Creek, I believe. But that's a major flowway, and not only does it have wetland issues, which I'll go into in a moment, it also has access issues. The only access to this 40-acre site is through a 50-foot access easement between two single-family homes. So if you want to build this site, you've got to put a road through between two single-family homes, or build a road through a 30-foot right-of-way that's currently used for drainage purposes in order to access behind these lots in order to get to this parcel. So it's compromise on all levels, but in the county, applying their 50% is wet. They believe that, according to their map, 50% of the property is wet. You can build 125 units on this site. They don't consider the water and sewer availability. They're not considering access issues. This, again, they would have to build a road through this 30-foot right-of-way behind all these homes to access this parcel, or they have a 50-foot access easement here. But the real problem is it's not buildable. This land is wet. It's a major flowway that serves hundreds of acres of properties. The only usable land is a little land here, a little land here, and a little land here. And how do I know this? Because I worked on the property next door. This is the Falls development. And I looked at this property for several developers during that time, and I know other people have looked at it too. You're not going to build 125 units on this site. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that the maximum is 10 units, and that's only if you can get access between these properties. You can bring in water and sewer, and you can provide drainage and a 75-foot buffer adjacent to this wetland. Now, if you can do all that, you can build 10 units, but you'll never build 125 units on this 30-acre site. On top of that, well, why don't you do multifamily, or why don't you do townhomes? Well, the density transition policies in the comprehensive plan prevent anything but single-family homes adjacent to single-family homes. So this property is useless, but the counties, in their current analysis that was adopted on Tuesday, if you look up the low-density category, there's 62 vacant acres. Well, I just showed you 30 acres that can't be built on, and the county's assigning 268 units to that low-density land. And the other acreage are very small parcels scattered throughout the county that will never yield 268 units. Even under the core commercial office residential, you have 82 acres. Well, 35 of those acres is in the Aquarius property next to the Martin, or the hospital site off of Salerno Road. And according to the county's figures, you can build 350 units on that site. Again, these are not realistic. In the county, that, you know, what's really bad, the county doesn't provide any location of where this vacant property is. They don't provide any analysis of whether it's buildable or not. And the sad part is, I know they have the technology to do that. I know that Metro Forecasting has the modeling ability to really evaluate what's vacant and determine what can really be built on the property, but their hands are tied. They can't use best management practices because they're tied to a formula in the comprehensive plan that overestimates supply and underestimates need. And this is just a clear example. You're not going to get 1,890 units on vacant land. It's not reasonable, and you have to look at what's reasonable in your comprehensive plan. Another thing we did, I looked at all the properties that I worked on over the past 10 years. There's been 11 properties, and just to see how much of those we achieved maximum density. And I applied the county's wetland density transfer and everything else to it, and we come out with an average of 60% is what we're achieving of maximum density. The county's saying we get 100% every time. It's not true. The only time we came close to 100% was on the reserve at Jensen Beach Apartment, which is off of Savannah Road. There's no wetlands, there's no issue with density transition zone, but you have to build to 3 stories. In order to get any of these kind of 100% densities, you got to build to 3 stories. And I know Rio Town Center is a good example, but they couldn't get to their density without building 3-story apartments. That's not necessarily what Martin County wants, but that's the only way you can get to the numbers that the county is proposing in their residential capacity analysis. It's just not realistic, and I can go back 10 years before this and show you the same numbers over and over again. The county should look at what's realistic when they're doing these residential capacity studies. It's definitely not reasonable to expect to build over 2,000 units in the CRAs. That means 500 units in the Palm City CRA, 500 units in the Hope Sound CRA, 500 units in the Jensen Beach CRA, and the county saying, you're going to approve these one day. 2,063 units in the CRAs. You guys aren't going to do that. It took Rio Town Center 6 years with this existing developer to get the approval. It sat idle for 15 years prior to that because nobody could touch it. I mean, thank God for Charlie Mordecai. He's the only one that could pull off that. But if you're going to assume you can build 2,000 units in the CRAs, then you're looking at this. It's not realistic. You're not going to put 3-story buildings all over the CRAs. And it's not only physically not possible because a lot of the CRAs have only a two-story height limit. It's political suicide if you guys do that. And I think you guys know that. You're not going to put 500 units in Palm. You just talked about today buying property in the CRA because you don't think it's suitable for development. And that's how we should be looking at it. We should buy the property that's not suitable for development and put development on property that's already been impacted. And the last thing I got to say is that it's not reasonable to say that 4,145 units in Newfield is going to be built in 10 years or even 20 years. Our capacity analysis evaluated the absorption rate of Martin Downs DRI. It took 35 years to build 2,500 units in Martin Downs. West Jensen, we looked at that absorption rate. It took 23 years to build 1,200 units. Neither one of those projects met their maximum allowances. They all built hundreds of units less than what was allowed. So to say that you're going to build that all of your capacity, all of your future capacity is tied up in one project, again, some of that's going to get built, but you can't use all 4,145 units to say you're going to meet your 10 and 20-year capacity. It's just not realistic, and it's not reasonable. Now, that's the criteria 5. The county staff agrees that we meet criteria 6. Again, it's environmental, the land is impacted. There's no problem with any impact on endangered species. So the site, the 396 acres, is appropriate for urban development, and we agree. And also in number 7, the county staff agrees that we're going to pay the full cost of the development impacts by agreeing to the text that we put in our proposed amendment that would require the developer to pay the full cost of capital facilities needed to address the impacts of such development. So really the only thing that's hanging up this, and again, that's the same thing with the criteria 8. The county staff recognizes that we're going to amend the capital improvement plan if necessary to accommodate the needs of this project. So really, the only thing that we're hanging up on is the residential capacity analysis. And I'm going to let Laura Smith with GIA Consultants talk about some of the flaws in the current methodology, and then I think Tyson's going to wrap it up after that. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Smith. I am a senior associate with GAI Consultants, and I serve as our urban analytics director within our community solutions group. I've been a professional consultant for the last 11 years, and before that, I spent 7 years as a professional municipal planner in local government. I also sit on the Lake County Planning and Zoning Board. I have been a board member there for 11 years. I sit on the Florida Redevelopment Association Board of Directors, and am also a designated redevelopment administrator within the Florida Redevelopment Association. I am also a member of the Counselors of Real Estate and a certified instructor with the Florida Redevelopment Academy. Yes, needless to say, I'm busy. So what I want to talk to you about today is the residential capacity analysis methodology, primarily because we were approached, or I was approached by your applicant to essentially attempt to replicate the residential capacity analysis that is described in your growth management plan. So I was tasked with, can you run this methodology out and conduct a capacity analysis and make a determination, since one had not recently been done at that time. This was in 2023. So I did that to the best of my abilities. However, the methodology does present several flaws or errors that had to be adjusted for. So I had to make substitutions, adjustments, or alterations that were what I felt to be in professional best practices standards, but also that were reliable and accurate supplements where data either does not exist or is not available as described in your methodology. So I'd like to start by identifying just a few of those significant flaws, then walking you through what the text amendment that we're proposing for the residential capacity analysis language in your comprehensive plan actually does in real time, so that you can understand what that math looks like. And I assure you the intent of all of those text amendment pieces where we talk about, chapters 1, chapter 2, chapter 4, and these extensive text amendments is actually to resolve many of those errors or flaws and bring them into a consistent system that you all can follow, that your staff can easily follow, and that will not create these types of hurdles for you going forward and lay out a more direct planning path for you all looking forward into the future to respond to the growth that is coming into Florida every day. So first and foremost is the Population Technical Bulletin. So in section 1.7.a of your Comprehensive Growth Management Plan, it requires that your Population Technical Bulletin be produced and adopted by the County Commission every year, and that the methodology for producing that be clear and available to the public for review. Now, this bulletin is important. It is important because it provides the data that your residential capacity methodology relies upon. It's actually stipulated in your Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. Use the data from the Population Technical Bulletin. So the bulletin that was just adopted earlier this month, the 2025 bulletin, is the first Population Technical Bulletin that has been produced since 2017. So in the 7 years since then, a bulletin has not been produced and has not been adopted. That means that the residential capacity determinations that have been done for the county and that the county has adopted did not follow the methodology of the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. They couldn't, because there was no Population Technical Bulletin adopted. There was nothing produced. So any of those over that 7 years could not follow your methodology any more than I could trying to replicate it. So to that point, it really calls to question how reliable that determination is. If it can't follow your information and it doesn't acknowledge that it can't follow information that doesn't exist, how can you rely upon that? So even the residential capacity analysis, which you all just adopted earlier this month, is dated October 2025. And in the same hearing that you adopted that, you adopted the 2025 Technical Bulletin, which means yet again, that capacity analysis was produced without a technical bulletin. It was produced on best practices being used by a professional, just like the one that I produced for this applicant to present to this board. Now, the population projections aspect are another concern. Policy 4.1D.2 states that the bulletin be produced and adopted by the county every year using medium population estimates from the Office of Economic and Demographic Research. This is EDR for short. But they don't publish medium numbers. EDR publishes single data points for counties, cities, and unincorporated areas. They don't publish a low, medium, and high like some agencies and organizations do. They simply publish one number. That may explain why your population technical bulletin hasn't been updated since 2017. It may not, this may not be the reason it hasn't been updated or produced since then, but the fact that a medium number doesn't come out of EDR may be one of the concerns as to why that document hasn't been produced consistently. But also, it may explain why the 2025 bulletin contains such extensive language explaining why they had to supplement data from Bieber, who does publish data in low, medium, and high, as well as the census, because EDR data was not available. Again, these are things that are written into your comprehensive plan that don't exist in real life. You can't go to EDR and get that data. It's not there in that way. So let's correct that. Let's make sure that your plan does exactly what it's supposed to do for you, and that it's something that is consistently interpreted across anyone who wants to go back and double check or revalidate those data points. Supply duplication is another concern. Within policy 4.1D.5, the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan states that capacity shall consist of these 4 items: vacant property, current subdivided lots, lots of record developed prior to 82 or platted after 82, and the potential for residential development in the CRAs. Now, the concern here is that item number 1 already captures item 2, 3, and 4. So if you are not very careful doing this, there is a very high risk of duplication where you are counting a parcel within the CRA that is vacant and allows residential use twice. You're counting it once when you're counting vacant property that allows residential use, and you're counting it again as potential for residential development in the CRA. So that's where this potential for overcounting and duplicate counting occurs. That's part of why in the proposed text amendment, we've removed that. And we've said it's vacant land, whether it's in the CRA, whether it's a lot of record prior to 82 or after 82, it's vacant land that allows for residential use. There is really no reason to call it out separately. It is what it is, and it's counted under item 1. So to avoid that potential for duplication, let's clean that up a little bit. Seasonal population is another concerning aspect and an area that I think we can all probably agree, especially anyone here who's ever rented a vacation home, maybe, for your family, and gone on vacation where you rented a house or a condo or a townhome. Seasonal units do not hit the same occupancy standard as a home. So the way that your comprehensive growth management plan is written now, you estimate seasonal population by taking the average persons per household. That means like your home that you live in all year round. However many people live there, that's that average. But we're saying, let's apply that number to seasonal units. And that's how we're going to determine the seasonal population. Now, when we look at hotel occupancy, for example, they assume double occupancy. That's how their average daily rate is established for a hotel room. It assumes 2 persons per room. And your 2025 bulletin actually acknowledges this and says the way that they calculate the population of a hotel room is double occupancy because that's how the rates are established. But then they use this 2.3 persons per household standard for all of your other vacant units that are not hotel rooms. So any of you who have ever rented a home when you go on vacation with your family, know that it's unlikely if you rented a 4-bedroom house, you're only going to put 2.3 people in it. It could certainly accommodate far more than that, especially in a temporary seasonal use capacity. This is another area where we're not really recognizing how much population comes out of your seasonal units because we're using a flawed number to calculate it. This 2.3 persons per household has nothing to do with seasonal population. The only relevant piece is the units being in seasonal use. But the entire metric of 2.3 persons per household is based on your permanent population and your permanent households. Applying that to a temporary use, a seasonal use that is a vacant unit, is not proper. So the capacity determinations that you've had done, they are now in 10-year and 20-year outlooks. Your growth management plan states that the permanent population projections, like we've said, from EDR are what's used, but both the 2023 capacity analysis that was produced and the 2025 capacity analysis produced used 2020 decennial census data. But you're supposed to be using EDR for the in-between decennial census years. That's what your growth management plan says. Decennial census years occur every 10 years. We had one in 2020, 2010, 2000, 1990, so on going back. So in 2023, EDR estimates for the current year should have been used, not 2020. And then in 2025, current estimates from EDR should have been used. They were not. 2020 decennial census data was used. So if I use 2020 decennial census data to do an analysis in 2025, is that projection period that I'm looking out 10 years from the day I did the analysis or 10 years from when the data was produced? It's 10 years from when the data was produced. That's why you're supposed to use EDR in the interim years. You're not supposed to be going back and using old decennial census data. It's not picking up any of the population growth that you've experienced since the decennial census. It's not recognizing any changes in your vacancy conditions or your household sizes that have occurred since the decennial census was produced. That is a huge issue with that determination being made. But it also means that the 2025 residential capacity determination that was adopted at the beginning of this month is not an outlook to 2035 for 10 years. A 10-year outlook using 2020 data is 2030, which means that outlook is not to 2035, it's to 2030. And your 20-year outlook is not to 2045, it's to 2040. These are big issues, and they need to be addressed appropriately because they're important for you all to have the right information to make the informed decisions that you all have to make as elected officials for the growth of this community. But another concerning point is, as we all know, the decennial census is done every 10 years and that data is published. It's readily available. If we compare the 2023 residential capacity analysis that was adopted in December 2023 to the one that was just adopted last year, which both reflect 2020 census data, they don't match. On your screen, you will see the 2023 residential capacity analysis compared to the 2025 residential capacity analysis. The numbers circled in red do not match. Those circled in green and pink all do not match. So those are huge inconsistencies. While they don't seem like a lot of numbers to be different, they call into question the accuracy and reliability of the information you all are relying on to make your informed decisions. Those are important, nuanced things. And the better that your methodology that is adopted into your comp plan defines where data comes from and how it's used, the less likely these types of inconsistencies are to occur in the future. So I did produce a residential capacity analysis in an effort to replicate the methodology outlined in your comprehensive growth management plan. As I said, I conducted that in 2023. So my 10-year outlook from 2023, which was based on 2022 estimates, because that was what was available in 2023, looks out to 2031. The Metro Forecasting residential capacity analysis, which was produced in October of this year, which you all just adopted earlier this month, that 10-year outlook, again, doesn't actually go to 2035 because it's based on 2020 data. It actually goes to 2030. So if we compare that to my 10-year outlook, what you'll see is that the demand is not wildly different. My demand number is a little under 1,000 higher in terms of units for the primary urban service district than Metro forecasting. But if you look at the supply, this is where we run into that question of it's almost double. How is that possible if there's not duplication somewhere or wetlands not being counted properly? Because I've done this using GIS. I could send you my layers. It's not really much of a question. So how did theirs get so much higher? And as Morris was explaining, we know Metro forecasting can show us that information. Where is it? How do we now double check that? How do we verify the accuracy of that information? We can't. So we have to rely on its accuracy. But then when we go back and look and compare data across documents, it doesn't align. So we're stuck with this question of, well, can I rely on this? Is this accurate? Is this, where do I go from here? Which ultimately is how this ended up being a situation where I stepped in and helped this applicant produce a residential capacity analysis. But the next thing that we did is went in and said, okay, let's try to just clean up the language in the existing comprehensive growth management plan, not redo it, just clean it up so that these major issues can be resolved. The first thing that we did was looked at supply, and we said, okay, let's be real about what supply really is. So instead of saying we're going to take 100% of the maximum density permitted by future land use, we said, if there are parcels inside the urban service district that have 0 wetlands on them, those get 75%, which Morris just showed you is a good example. That is even above what you've been achieving on average, which, as he showed you, is about 60%. 75% is already generous and above that. So in your primary urban service district, you've got about 1,202 acres of parcels which have no wetlands on them at all. At their maximum density, that equates to 6,290 housing units. Within your primary urban service district, you have about 1,087 acres of parcels which have wetlands on them, but less than 50% of the parcels are wetlands. So in that situation, instead of applying 75%, you would apply 50% of the maximum density across the entirety of the property. Again, this gets back to how much density is actually being achieved for most of the projects being built. What is the more realistic approach here based on past experience and historical trends? So the bigger change comes with parcels that have more than 50% wetlands. So they've got wetlands and more than 50% of these parcels contain wetlands. In that situation, much like the example Morris just showed you, there is really no way to guarantee that you're going to be able to move density around on those properties in the way that the comp plan allows it to occur, especially with that much wetland intrusion on the parcels. So in those situations, we've said 75% of the maximum land use density, but only on the upland portion of those lands, not including the wetland. This would result in the 37 upland acres that you have within the primary urban service district on parcels that have more than 50% wetlands, comes out to about 83 housing units. So that means your total is about 10,195 units that are available within the primary urban service district from a vacant land perspective. And you may say, that seems crazy, we can't possibly have that much wetlands. Well, we mapped it. So if you look on this map, everything shown in yellow are the parcels within the urban service districts. The green is the wetlands coming from the Water Management District and the DEP wetland layer files. When you look at that in terms of the individual parcels and how much they are inundated with wetlands, the darker colors here show parcels that have the greatest concentration of wetlands within them. The lighter colors show the least concentration of wetlands. This is on a parcel-by-parcel basis. There are a lot of parcels within the urban service district that are inundated by wetlands to some extent or another, but in a measurable way that impacts their ability to hit 100% of their maximum achievable density. So the adjustments that we're proposing are not unreasonable, and they do not really step far from reality. They are very much consistent with what we are seeing in practice today and what is in existence today. In terms of demand, there are several different ways to calculate these things, but our goal when updating and offering these amendments was to make it as clean and straightforward as possible. So you'll see here we took from the 2020 decennial census your current households, your projected households, which is just your projected population, that's your permanent population divided by persons per household. Now we've got our projected households. So now we know the difference between those two is your demand for 2030, and the difference between those two is your demand for 2040. So this is how many households, permanent resident households, will be needed within the unincorporated portion of Martin County through that period. But understanding vacancy is a much bigger area that needs attention. Using national vacancy averages or arbitrary percentages of what should or should not be considered vacant or what should be considered excess vacant or not is not helping you all or your staff plan for the growth that's coming into the county so that they can respond and prepare for it appropriately. We need to be using real examples of what's going on in your community. So the alternative that we've proposed is a 5-year average of vacancy. So we took the 5-year average of vacancy, looking at the data from 2016, 17, 18, and 19 from the American Community Survey, as well as the 2020 decennial census. Averaging that gives us a minimum vacancy because these are the averages you've been achieving for the last 5 years. So this is actually what your market demands of vacancy. We could call it excess. That's not going to change it being a household or a vacant unit. The reality is these units are vacant, and for one reason or another, they are not occupied by permanent residents. The seasonal ones are being used seasonally. Those rented or sold is only 0.7%. But you've got 4% in other vacant. Those could be storm damaged. Those could be held up in estate or entitlement issues. All types of other things go on with these units simply because they do not house a permanent resident at that time does not mean we should call them excess vacant and demand that they be used for a permanent resident. We don't get to do that. So we need to be reasonable and realistic about what's actually going on. Once that you take that 15.6% minimum vacancy, you multiply it by your households, that's going to grow that number up to give you your housing units. That's it. That is exactly how you do exactly what is described within the text amendment that we propose. It's not difficult, it's not complicated, it is very straightforward, and it's been laid out for you here in the simplest form possible, because that was our goal when we said, let's see if we can help them fix this language without completely changing how you're doing it, simply making it more consistent with what we see every single day and making sure that the sourcing is stuff that you can actually go and get that's publicly available and reliable. The demand distribution is exactly as you originally have it, where it's broken across your primary, secondary, and outside the urban service district. And that results in these calculations. So for 2030, using the text amendment, that's just 5 years from now, you have 146% capacity. But by 2040, that number drops to 92.5. These are concerning things that need to be addressed. So when we talk about expanding urban service boundaries and how we go about accommodating future growth, it's important to know what's really happening so that we can make informed decisions. So the staff recommendations related to the residential capacity analysis text amendments, first was that they recommended denial because the proposed amendment to policy 4.1D.2 conflicts with Florida statute, which requires medium EDR population projection estimates be used. As I've already explained, EDR does not publish medium estimates. And our language does not say don't use EDR. It simply removes the word medium and adds the word sourced from Bieber. That's it. It leaves EDR in there and it says use EDR, and after that it says as sourced from Bieber, because that's where you can get those medium numbers. Because your other data does not exist, it's not a thing. And I've cited statute here. It does not say that you absolutely have to use EDR and that it has to be the medium EDR projections. What it says is that you are responsible, that your comprehensive plan should be based upon permanent and seasonal population estimates and projections, which shall either be those published by EDR or generated by the local government based upon a professionally accepted methodology. It does say the plan must be based on at least the minimum amount of land required to accommodate medium projections as published by the Office of EDR. But keep in mind, I haven't said that you can't do that. I've simply sourced them from where they come from. And that's the only change to that text amendment. So I do not feel that that is consistent in terms of the argument that it violates statute to make that text amendment. Staff also recommended denial, stating that the amendments to these sections are not clear, and that until a methodology is applied and words describing calculations become calculations, it is unclear the result. Well, I've just shown you the calculations, but also I understand that in your existing comprehensive growth management plan, words are used to describe calculations. So when we proposed our text amendment, we did the same to try to remain as consistent as possible with your own formatting. As you'll see here, the top section is directly from your existing comprehensive growth management plan. These are words describing calculations. The proposed text amendment uses words to describe calculations. Very similar formatting, very similar symbology, and very similar language. We are not trying to make this more difficult. We are actually trying to make it more straightforward and simple. That's, of course, our goal. And then lastly, staff recommended denial of the proposed text amendment because the population technical bulletin and capacity methodology would likely result in multiple internal inconsistencies within the text of the comprehensive growth management plan. I want to highlight the word multiple because not a single example was provided. We did make a lot of text amendments, and I can tell you, I have read your comprehensive growth management plan far more times than I think I've probably read very many other people's comprehensive growth management plans. And I've run it through and strike through underline. I've had other people read through it. We have really tried to be very, very meticulous in what we've done here to prevent any internal inconsistencies. And this is the only statement that we received back as a staff recommendation for denial. Not one inconsistency was identified, but the determination was made that multiple must exist. I would welcome one example. So with that said, I am going to turn things back over to Tyson, who is going to talk us through a few other topics.
Thank you, Laura. So I think Laura and Morris did a great job in giving an overview and an explanation of both our proposals as well as responses to staff comments. So I'll just briefly touch on a few final items. We've been involved in this process with the county, with your county staff for a long time. Back in March of 2024, we submitted a letter expressing some concerns about the residential capacity analysis. We did it again in October of 24 before your amendments were transmitted to the state, and then again in March of this year when those EAR amendments were approved. And in addition to the flaws in the formula methodology that Laura pointed out, we also believe that there's inconsistencies with the requirement of Florida statutes, specifically section 163.3177. By way of example, plan amendments are to be based on the best data available, and your residential capacity analysis, as you've heard today, is not. The formulas and data used are supposed to be used by professionally accepted methodologies and not limited to points, a particular set of arbitrary data points. Again, by way of example, in your capacity analysis, you use maximum density, which is discouraged by your comp plan and in some cases prohibited by your comp plan. But that's the default that we use in our residential capacity analysis formula. Similarly, the default in your comp plan is that you do not get density for wetland. But the default in the analysis is you get 50% of your density from your wetlands. And again, the character of the land, what's actually on there, is ignored in all of this. In addition, you're to coordinate with other governmental agencies as well as long-term transportation plans and similar plans and reports. Capital investment, economic development, and diversification are also elements that must be considered. And finally, factors of projected population, the location of the population, and public facilities are to be considered. The residential capacity analysis methodology does not consider this. You've heard today all of the flaws that we think are in your current residential capacity analysis, and that what we present today is a better way to get a realistic determination of future housing demands and future housing needs, which is the point of this analysis. But that being said, at the end of the day, what this is all about is whether or not there's a need in the county to expand capacity and where. And as Morris pointed out, even in your own 2025 residential capacity analysis, the findings were you have to expand capacity. Your comprehensive plan provides that when the undeveloped acreage within either the primary urban service district or the secondary urban service district provides no more than 10 years of projected population growth, the county is required to expand capacity. That's what your own adopted analysis found. So the time to commence planning for capacity expansion is gone. It is now the time to expand capacity. And separate apart from that, what we come down to is section 4.7A.7 of your comp plan sets forth the criteria of when the primary urban service district is to be altered. It sets forth 8 criteria that this board needs to find in order to alter that urban service boundary. Your staff has agreed with our application that we meet 5 of those. There's 3 that they find that we do not comply with, but that we disagree and we think that we do. One is the internal inconsistencies with the comp plan, and another one is incompatible with your surrounding uses. I think Morris did a great job in providing an overview of how we meet both of those. And then the last one is this subpart 5 that provides that the land that you look at and the determination is whether there's reasonable capacity on suitable lands within the primary urban service district. So that determination is not based on the raw numbers of your capacity analysis. Instead, you have to look deeper into what those lands are and where they're located. So the first issue is, are there suitable lands within the primary urban service district? And again, as Morris pointed out, we don't think there's enough suitable lands. One, we don't think there's enough capacity to begin with, and certainly there's not enough suitable lands to meet the population demands and the housing needs in the future. And the second element is there reasonable capacity? And your comp plan defines what reasonable capacity means. Are there environmental concerns? Are there wetlands? Are there uplands that we want to preserve? Are there other unique characteristics, being next to lakes or rivers or creeks, that we want to make sure that things are not overdeveloped? Are those lands an efficient use and expansion of public facilities and services? Again, as Morris pointed out, a lot of these infill parcels, they're on tiny right-of-ways, 30 feet. They don't have access to utilities. You can't access them without disturbing other residential developments. So those you take off the list of being reasonable. And then finally, you look at projected population and where that population is likely to end up. And again, I challenge you with this parcel today, and I believe staff has acknowledged this, that we check all of those 3 boxes. That there are no environmental concerns with this piece of property, that we have the residential, the urban services already right at our parcel to accommodate an expansion of the urban service district, and the population growth and the job growth is right here in this area, and the housing need is going to be right here in this area. And based on all of those criteria, I strongly believe, and you've heard the testimony today, that we meet all 8 of those criteria. You have to expand capacity pursuant to your own comp plan, and this is the appropriate parcel for you to do so. And with that, we greatly appreciate all of your time today. The project team is here to answer any questions that you may have, and we greatly appreciate your consideration.
Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Hetherington.
Yes. Thank you for your presentation. That was very thorough and detailed. And I'll just say for my part, our professional staff I think is probably one of the top in the state, and I will concur with their analysis for this, and I'll move staff's recommendation for denial.
Commissioner Vargas.
I would like to second that motion, Commissioner Hetherington. I've had extensive talks. We're not put in the seat to continuously push out the urban service boundary. You work for a developer. I get it. I was in real estate in Miami-Dade County. Look what happened, the explosion. There comes a point when there isn't any more land. There isn't any more land. It's like trying to cram people on a ship or an island. This is sprawl. This is sprawl. And people are fed up. That's why I was elected. I can't speak for the others. I will follow what our staff has recommended, and we've had detailed thoughts, talks, and also we've laid out. And I said, well, what about this? What about this? And they came back with strong analysis and recommendations.
Commissioner Campy.
I'm going to go into a little more detail than just bam, right in. First off, I appreciate the presentation. I feel like I should get like continuing education credits for that presentation, but very well done. And to the applicant, I would tell you that you obviously, I'm not familiar with the young lady, but the planner, what's your name again? Morris Crady, and Tyson Waters, you picked, to the applicant, you picked the right people locally to represent you. They did a remarkable job, and they did what they were supposed to do. They were paid to make a presentation based on bringing this home. I have several points to make based on a long presentation. Can you bring up the map from 2010, please? I think it's in the applicant's presentation, but it was the example from 2010.
Yeah.
The applicant's presentation is a long slide deck, so we're going to use our map because we can get to it more quickly.
Do you have it exactly? I would like is this the 2010 version?
Yes.
Yes, this is the 2010. This is what was adopted in 2010.
Can you fill the whole screen with it, please? Yeah, this is not going to work to my point. I'm going to need to see theirs because the second slide of theirs, what it was and what it is, you don't have that. They do. I'm sorry. It'll take a minute. Just go. Did you just pass it? This one, and then what's the next one after this? Okay. You can leave this one. This was done in 2010, as Mr. Crady had mentioned. I happen to have been here in 2010. Commissioner Hurd and I are the only two that are here from 2010, and I'm pretty sure she did not vote for this.
Absolutely.
But I did. And I have asked my family members, I have a crazy good memory. The Neal brothers from Fort Pierce, farmers from Fort Pierce, owned this property, and Nancy. And they came down and they had a great idea of utilizing this property that they owned that was farm land to 2010, remember, in the height of the recession, to sort of work a new angle and create opportunity, not housing at the time, industrial. And they had a great idea that it had a little piece that touched right onto the C-44 canal, and it was going to be marine industrial. I can almost remember the presentation. Very well done. And it passed. I would guess, was Commissioner Fielding here then, or Falliere? Either way, it passed, at least got 3 votes. I was one of them. Back then, and I was pretty new. I came in late 2008, so it was the first year and a half or so. I thought, okay, here's something. We need industrial. It's not housing. We're going along. We agreed basically with staff's recommendation to do what was asked. Couple years passed, and then through, I guess someone realized that, wait a second, as Mr. Crady said, there was a perpetual easement or whatever the legal terminology was with the Army Corps of Engineers that they could not use that, they could not access the water. Uh-oh, they're back. Hey, we didn't realize we're not going to be able to do this original vision that we had, and we're going to need to pivot to a new vision. I supported that because I get it. You know, our staff didn't notice, they didn't notice, we can't do it. It changed their whole dynamic. Will you be kind enough to allow us to alter the plan? Yes, we will. Okay, then they moved it around a little bit. I don't see a version of it there. A couple years pass. I had been gone for a while, but came back. A couple years pass, and then I get a call, hey, really difficult to get this going. I heard a lot from the people that lived across the street. Mr. Crady is accurate when he said about 96th Street and having the entrance, their entrance across the street from St. Lucie Falls. Can you help us? Can we maneuver it around? And I give Nancy Neal a lot of credit. She has worked tirelessly for whoever she was representing, and I know it's changed hands a couple of times. She would call me. Actually, she's calling me again now, this week. Can we meet? Can I meet you? Can I fly in? Can I do? And I was always very accommodating to help her because she is literally trying. I call her a one-woman economic development engine for Martin County. So whatever I could do, and she's lovely, so whatever I could do to assist her, I would. I've done Zoom calls with potential applicants or, businesses that wanted to come to this property. 2 or 3 in a row in a whole afternoon where we would do Zoom call after Zoom call trying to bring economic development to Martin County. But it was a struggle. We talked about data centers. We talked about cold storage. We talked about a lot of different breweries. I met with lots of people, not just Zoom. I met with people in person trying to do economic development with her. Then they realized, well, it's not going to work, and that's where this comes. Don't really want to have those industrial tractor trailers coming out on 96th Street, passing Crystal Lake Elementary School. It's a lot. So I agree when Mr. Crady made that very impassioned presentation about we will guarantee you that we won't have trucks, and we switched it over, and wasn't that great of us? Yeah, of course, we all thought at the time it would make much more sense to not only have the gateway be on Canner Highway versus 96th Street, which if you haven't driven it ever, it's a very narrow kind of back road. So they came again and asked, hey, would you move it? Can we move the density and the industrial to Canner Highway? And guess what I said? Yes, because it made sense. And then we heard, well, I should also say that during the South Florida Gateway, which I'm very appreciative, and every time they came, hey, we got an applicant or we got someone that wants to come here, they want to store stuff outside, guess what I said? Yeah. The commission, as you see it now, was here. How high would the fence be? How would they shield it? Could they have a tank outside that would be taller than the roof? We went through all of the scenarios and we agreed and said yes. So now we're here then we even bought property for us to be on because we were pleased. And I'm pretty sure Waterside Way is not constructed by the applicant, it's constructed by us. And so now we have a freestanding urban service boundary. Then rural lifestyle shows up. And I, believe it or not, I was a no on rural lifestyle. Commissioner Hurd and I. That being said, my concern back then with rural lifestyle is how do you stop it? How do you really fence it in so that you can't just keep it going? Well, there was originally it was going to be just the primary, then it was going to be the primary and the secondary, then it was going to be the primary, the secondary, and the freestanding. And then it got narrowed around and they came up with a version. And then someone came and said, hey, we got another opportunity here. We think it's going to be great. Can we stretch out the rural lifestyle a little bit? Exactly what they needed it to be. And I said yes, because I wanted that project. I would have voted for the projects that utilized the rural lifestyle amendment, even if they were separate projects. And that's what I always said. The golf courses, I make no apologies for Atlantic Fields, Apogee, the ranch. Golf is a great use of and protector of rural space for us. But here we are today, and I had an opportunity to meet with the applicant's team, and they make a very compelling story, and they're great people. So it's not a matter of like, I don't like them. But as Commissioner Hetherington said, these are my people. Those are your people. Now, I'm not discounting anything that I heard from Morris Crady, from Tyson Waters, and I apologize, Smith, your last name is Smith, makes a compelling story. But these are my people, and we've had these conversations, and I have heard concerns that, like, we're heading down a treacherous path. Now, I don't know all about the residential capacities and all that, and I have my own issues on residential capacity studies in general, not specifically about this, that, you know, if someone said, hey, we need, you know, more capacity in Hobe Sound, but I own property in Jensen, I don't care if you need more property in Hobe Sound. I own property in Jensen. So I have an issue on when, and because applicants are going to come forward and say, well, you know, this is where I am. So let's say everything that Ms. Smith said was accurate. I'm not agreeing to that, but let's just say, hypothetically, she's right. Now, David Farmer is not here to have a he said, she said. So my first concern would be, I would like him, as our consultant, to watch what Ms. Smith said, and then I'd love to hear his opinion. If he was here today, maybe you sounded very compelling, great, but he was compelling here 2 weeks ago. Our staff had an opportunity, so I would also like, if there's any kind of right off the top, our staff could challenge some of the things that you said. I do remember that someone said, well, you know, you're not using the number that your comprehensive plan amendment, comprehensive plan says you should use. You're using Bieber and you should use the other one. Well, the other one is from Bieber and vice versa, all of that. But here's my point. If all of that shook out and was accurate, and that extra capacity and expanded capacity is necessary, what determines where? Exactly where? Because here's my point about that long history I gave. You guys are using as your rationale for why it should be happening right here, because you're next to a freestanding urban service boundary that we gave you. Because a couple of years ago, it wasn't that. And then you said, well, we're going to be over here next to this and next to that one that we gave you. So you're using the things that you had come to in the past and said, hey, can you help us out and can you do this for us? And now, a couple years, 6, 7, 8 years later, you're like, well, since you did that, we need to have this, which is exactly what the people that constantly beat us up, some of us that are pro-business or looking to be reasonable, they would say, if you do that, this is what's going to happen. And today, it seems like that's what's trying to happen. So even if your capacity numbers are accurate and 8, 9, 10, 15, 35, 40 years from now, we need more, I don't understand why you think you should get it right here, because the reasons you are saying it's reasonable is we changed it to what you wanted, and now you want something else. I can't support that. Thank you.
Commissioner Capps.
So this is a comprehensive plan amendment, and I would like to turn our attention to page 252. And it's the second page of the agenda item summary. And then about halfway down the page, legal sufficiency review. This is a legislative matter. Legislative decisions are those in which the local government formulates policy rather than applying specific rules to a particular situation. A local government's approval or denial of an issue in its legislative capacity is typically subject to a fairly debatable standard of review. Fairly debatable means that the government's action must be upheld if reasonable minds could differ as to the propriety of the decision reached. Decisions subject to a fairly debatable standard of review need only be rationally related to a legitimate public purpose, such as the health, safety, and welfare of the public, to be valid. Given this broad discretion, only decisions that are arbitrary and capricious or illegal are subject to serious legal challenge. And I think that There's nothing more fundamental to the comprehensive plan or to the Martin County difference than the urban services boundary. And based on staff analysis, I don't think that the evidence requires that we move this boundary at this time. Therefore, I support Commissioner Hetherington's motion to deny.
Ms. Nobby, I like to read more than anyone you've ever met in your life. And yet, these two agenda items that you prepared even challenged my feverish advocacy for the written word. You put on your FBI analyst hat, and what a prodigious report you've prepared. Excellent, excellent work. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. This does away with the need to continue with public hearing number 2, correct?
Public comment?
Is there any public comment? Please come forward. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought you were going to beat the drum a little bit. I thought you were going to beat the drum a little bit.
Why?
For the record, my name is not Bill Summers.
President.
You got it. There you go. Hey, so I'm watching this at home, and I see the staff recommendation for denial, and I go, what? What is going on around here? This is very, very curious. It's like, what planet am I on? In fact, maybe our very astute Stewart News reporter could do the research and find out how many years ago it was something like this happened. So it's refreshing, but it's very curious, very curious. And all I can say is, I guess, thank God for election cycles. Thank you.
So we do not need to, since I've denied this, we don't go on to public hearing number 2, do we?
Microphone is on. So I think we do not have public hearing number 2 unless the applicant has a different idea.
No, I think that was part of my comment, is just understanding a stipulation that if the text amendment does not go through, the future manuscript amendment would de facto be denied as well.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you for your
thank you.
Do we need a motion for that, or no?
Do we need to take a break? Let's take a 10-minute break, stretch our legs. We are back, and Commissioners, Donna Gordon has just reminded me that we haven't approved the consent agenda yet. So,
Struggling through, maybe we got to reconsider.
first of all, we have to take care of a pull. You want to take care of the pull right now? I pulled that simply because I want to put some light on this consent agenda because I think it's a fine one. And that is purchasing more lots in Palmar.
Yeah, so part of the ELOC program and their approvals and the board's approval of those items was the individually owned Palomar properties. And so we need a resolution to accept them because we don't have to come every single time as long as, you know, the legal department approves everything on there. And as far as the tax deed sale goes, we have to have a resolution to accept those, but we haven't even tried the process yet. So we have a lot of things we have to meet because we can't pay doc stamps and things like that. So the clerk's office is working on that for us to get it together.
Okay. Just wanted to highlight that.
I'd make a motion to accept.
I'll second. I thought I'd make a comment or two about that giant tract of land out there called Palmar and its very storied history of how it all came to be. And from what I understand, there were these sort of charlatan salesmen down in Florida who sold just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people up north a bill of goods that buy your piece of land in paradise for $100 or $500, you know, sight unseen. People would just mail in the checks. And this giant tract of land is owned by hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals and their families and their descendants. And it never was really buildable land. It's swamp, basically. Wetland, almost all wetland, or the bulk of it, unbuildable. But it's a fascinating. Somebody should write a book about it. It's an amazing history, and it's been an ordeal for the county to unravel this and to try to buy up all these little pieces of land over the years. So, good job to all of you, trying to find who owns these parcels and who's willing to sell them, and what a job that must be.
But it's worth it.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now let's have a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Move approval.
A second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Now we can move on to Department 1, which is Office of Management and Budget items which require board approval. Good afternoon.
We're having a cameo.
Yeah, we are.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Can you hear me? Okay. Tracy Hurt, Budget and Fiscal Operations Coordinator in the Office of Management and Budget, in for Stephanie Murley. There are 4 items. You're not going to mess with me, Commissioner
am.
Campy? 4 items which require board approval. First one is permission to apply for the 25-26 Agricultural Regional Projects Program. Environmental Resource Division is requesting it. It's a grant award of $1,750,000 with no grant match required, only staff time to administer the grant.
Before we go on, I just want to say this is a first of its kind. It's a partnership that's unprecedented, and I'm sure it will be successful and it will pave the way for more projects. This is really a cool project.
Great. The second item is permission to accept from the Florida Department of Transportation for funds for rural areas to provide operating assistance for public transportation. This will provide transportation route that serves the village of Indiantown. The grant award is for $41,537, and there will be a grant matched by the county, which is already budgeted in the transit budget. And then item number 3 is a budget resolution to increase the Florida opioid settlement funds. Martin County has been issued $24,403.21 in additional funds. And then the final item 4 is a request by the Martin County Sheriff Office to use $11,022.21. This money comes from contraband forfeitures for the last 2 years, amounting in about $44,000, and 25% of it, which is the $11,000, is used for drug prevention, drug treatment, et cetera. And that's it.
Questions, comments? Commissioner Campy?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Prior to that, though, I would like to just compliment Ms. Hurt that we're having a full circle moment. She is a shining example of, first off, someone that's been able to reinvent their career. She was a teacher for my kids at Hidden Oaks Middle School. She was their math teacher, and they are as smart as they are today in large part because of Ms. Hurt. They absolutely loved her, and so do we. So we're very happy to have you with the county.
Yeah, we are.
Thank you.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thanks.
Come back again.
Department 3 is approval and acceptance of a funding agreement between Martin County and the Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund for the contribution of funds toward a conservation easement on a portion of Barbie Ranch.
I don't think Carla realized she was
Carla.
back to back.
Yes.
Pain or popping corks. And there's Mike Houston outside. He's wearing a suit. Maybe he wants to come in. Michael Houston, come in from the lobby. Takes 7 seconds for him to hear that.
Is it him or is it Carla?
It's both.
See Michael out there.
Is this you?
Says her name. Does Mike Houston? He's wearing a suit. Doesn't he want everybody to see him?
All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
This is a request for the approval and acceptance of a funding agreement as recommended by the Board of County Commissioners on August the 26th of 2025. Which was approved by the Environmental Lands Oversight Committee and also the board, that we would use the sales tax funds in the amount of $5 million for a conservation easement on approximately 669 acres of land located within the Barbie Ranch, which is in Martin County. The state is going to be funding the other part of it, which the total is, I think it was like 17 million. 17,169,200. And the county prepared a funding agreement with them, and if the board approves it, then we're gonna send it up to the state for them to execute the final document, and then once they do the closing, we'll do all that at the same time. So we're asking that the board approve and accept the funding agreement between Martin County and the Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund, using funds from the sales tax referendum to assist by contributing funds for the acquisition of the conservation easement at Barbie Ranch, and authorize the chair to execute any and all documents necessary to complete the transaction.
Running.
Another fine example of the board protecting taxpayer funds. For every dollar we invest, we've gotten more than a $3 investment,
What?
which is
I have a couple of questions for Michael Houston.
Houston.
We're waiting for you.
Sorry, guys.
We saw you out there. You're just chit-chatting in the lobby. We have questions for you.
Michael Houston, Senior Project Manager, Martin County.
What do you think of the purchase?
What do I think of Barbie Ranch?
Yes.
I think it's an amazing opportunity. I don't think we get many opportunities to set aside large tracts of land anymore. And the fact that we can do it with a conservation easement and only spend $5 million of our taxpayer dollars to lock up a property of that size is quite the opportunity that doesn't come around very often.
It's a beautiful property, too.
Yeah.
I would make a motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
Any further questions, comments? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Great job, thank you.
We didn't want you to miss out.
Then we have, do we just have one more item? Department 5 is an item to approve a contract with Miss Elise Elder for the position of county attorney.
Yes, Commissioners, having passed the nomination to accept Ms. Elder as your county attorney, myself negotiated contract, did have assistance with the chair who worked with us on the benefits package. Ms. Elder is seeking a salary increase, a 13% increase over her current salary, which is approximately $225,000. Let me bring up the item, sorry. The current, so the proposed salary is $267,052. $255,600, I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's the wrong contract.
$255,600 is the attached contract. The average salary, I'm sorry, what for county attorneys in the state of Florida is $260,052. The benefits package is the same package that Ms. Woods had. I've had the opportunity to speak with you all individually. This is the opportunity for you all to discuss amongst yourselves. The county attorney's position is, again, one of two positions that you hire. It would be myself and our county attorney. I certainly look forward to working with Ms. Elder, as the rest of our staff do, and hope that we can amicably resolve a contract here this afternoon. Thank you.
Mr. Campy.
Thank you very much. Ms. Elder, a couple of questions for you. How long have you been with the county?
About 7.5 years.
Thank you. How many people will be under your immediate control?
Right now, there are 5, but there might be 6 if we hire a deputy.
5 attorneys and
4 attorneys and a legal administrator.
Okay. I classify it almost as a small law firm that happens to be on the 4th floor of this building. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree.
And your area of expertise, your personal area of expertise is?
So I had a extensive expertise in litigation, which exposes you to a lot of areas of law since I've been which included employment law. I was hired as an employment lawyer, but since then I do land use. I work with every department in the county, and I represent the fire department and human resources. I'm board certified in city, county, and local government law, one of 302 attorneys out of 98,000 in the state of Florida right now.
Say that again.
I'm board certified in city, county, and local government law. I'm one of about 302 attorneys in the entire state out of about 98,000 attorneys.
Thank you. I felt that bared repeating. I think that obviously I was in favor of your promotion. I think not only have you proven yourself to be very valuable to myself as a commissioner, the board, our staff. I've watched you work during your interview process. Many people had reached out to me, both within your profession, others that you've dealt with, strongly recommending you for the position, and then afterwards congratulating us for selecting you. I think not only personally do I think you're an excellent, as Mr. Donaldson said, we only hire 2. I'm very happy to make the motion to approve your contract, but also I think it sends an appropriate message to the rest of our staff, understanding that if we have bench strength, that when the opportunity presents itself to promote from within, I think that sends an excellent message to our leaders that there is future opportunity for improvement and advancement here within the organization. So I wish you nothing but success.
Commissioner Capps.
I appreciate the good work you do, and glad you're the county attorney. I think the contract is reasonable, and I would be glad to second.
Mr. Mr. Donaldson, how long was Sarah Woods here?
All totaled, well, she worked for the county for well over 10 or 15 years, so
And how long was she the county attorney? Do you remember that?
right off the top of my head, I can't think of it. I think she was a county attorney for about 10 years.
I do.
Yeah, do you?
I know how long she was here. She became the county attorney in 2017, so 8 years.
8 years.
And her salary at the end of her tenure?
It was approximately the salary that is with Ms. Elder, $255,600 is what her salary would be.
And Mr. Donaldson, how long have you worked in Martin County?
29 years.
And before you became the county administrator, you were a department head?
I was the deputy county administrator for 5 years prior to that, and almost 20 years the public works or county engineer.
Supervising how many employees?
Well over 100.
And as a county administrator and the deputy county administrator for the last 10 years, supervising how many people?
Well, currently over 1,100.
And your salary is?
267.
Yeah, I have to compare those two figures, and I obviously we can't award positions based solely upon seniority in the county, but I feel that there has to be more of a rational nexus between the two salaries. I think that 255 is too high. Commissioner Vargas.
One question that was asked by Chairwoman Hurd, what was the salary from Ms. Woods? I believe it's $241,000. That was the number I was given, and I'm going to stick with that one. While I appreciate that we're looking out for Ms. Elder and want her to make a good living on what is fair, it's not responsible government to justify paying the maximum possible. It is not. We're giving away the farm. This is what this is. This is not smart negotiations. The parties that are talking about compensation are just justifying the maximum. And Martin County must be responsible for only as much money as is justifiable. In business, you have candidates. You go to candidate one, and if they're not in agreement with the compensation, the duties, you go to candidate two, and if they're not in agreement, you go to candidate three, and so forth. I cannot justify this maximum, and I feel that you're continuously trying to do this. There seems to be no ceiling here. I mean, there has to be a ceiling, just as in private business, too. What else is someone else willing to do this job for, to have the opportunity to work in Martin County? That they would, I can bet you, settle for less. Stewart Martin County law firms, an attorney working in a law firm could be pulling $60,000, maybe $150,000. Above that, they'd have to be a partner. That means they'd have to pay into the firm. This is not the case here. It's a very, very rich contract. I've read through it. And again, you're very well experienced. However, we cannot continue to accelerate salaries. It would be at $300,000. You have 4 attorneys and you have a legal aid. We don't have that many lawsuits here in Martin County. We don't. You got to start doubling up here. It's not smart negotiations. And I think that if you listen to the reasoning and if you listen to what is out there in the field, I never got this until yesterday, actually, this number, and I was aghast. I said, what? And I know there was requests for more. We're not a bottomless pit here. We're not a bottomless pit whatsoever. We have to be responsible to our taxpayers. If you find a private firm that wants to pay you that money, well then, go for it. But I think that possibly we may need to renegotiate the salary again. This is way, way up there because there's also the FRS, there's also the car, there's also the sick days too, or pay time off, as you would say. It seems like we're locked in. If we have a cause that for some reason we don't have a good relationship anymore, it seems like we're locked in to this contract. And I would urge my fellow commissioners to think more like business people and responsibility to the taxpayers. It's way too high, way too high.
Commissioner Campy.
All I can say is thank God there's 5 of us up here. I think most of what I just heard was inappropriate. The use of the word maximum and that we're scraping around the maximum, it says right here in the recommendation, the 2025 annual salary survey for local government attorneys in the state of Florida on average was $267,000. The negotiation here is $255,000. That's $12,000 less than the average, so it's not like we're maxing her out. It's only to Commissioner Hurd's point that she's only supervising 4 people, 4 attorneys and a clerk. She also oversees and gives legal advice to every single department in the county. The 1,100 employees that work on behalf of the county are supervised and given legal advice from one of the members that our county attorney has supervised. Mrs. Woods was making this number when she left because that's the market rate number. I don't think it's overly paid. I have dozens of friends who are Martin County attorneys. None of them make $60,000 a year. Some of them are not partners that pay in. They make, $400 or $500 an hour. I think, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but to paint Miss Elder as some trying to trick us into a deal, I think this is a very fair number. Your suggestion that the rest of us should start to act like business people. I've worked for multi-billion-dollar corporations for many, many years. We can brag on resumes, as you like to do all the time. And then in terms of how we're spending taxpayer money, you continue to bring up the fact that the rest of us seem to just waste taxpayer money. I've been very cautious about bringing up your travel expenses, your expenses of redesigning your office. So I would be very careful about throwing stones at the rest of us like we don't know what we're doing. Some of us have been elected several times by the taxpayers and our constituents because they feel very strongly that we are doing a good job. You're a first-term commissioner speaking and I think insulting our staff, insulting applicants, insulting members of the public. I think you're entitled to that opinion, and I've sat quietly and listened to it. But if you want to do that, and I don't think it's appropriate that Miss Elder, who we are happy, and to say to her, if you don't like your deal, you should go somewhere else, is inappropriate. Luckily, it's not a one-on-one job interview. There's 5 of us. We all heard the numbers. I've been here. I was part of eliminating a person that was a county attorney in 2017. I was the one that helped promote Miss Woods to her position and work when she decided to retire to bring her back. That is one of the most important positions in the county. And in terms of us not having a lot of lawsuits in the county, that's because a lot of the commissioners that are now sitting up here eliminated a lot of those lawsuits. We were very prone to litigation, people suing the county all the time. We don't even know what today will bring us. I've heard rumors that one of the applicants of today, if things didn't go their way, were threatening to sue us. We need very strong representation. They need to feel that they're supported by their commissioners, at least a majority of them. I get that there might be some personality conflicts, but I think that Ms. Elder, and I'm sorry that you even have to sit through this, but that's what public office means for professionals that work within it. $255,000 is a reasonable salary. I don't know what you're comparing it to. We're very fortunate to have her resume of skills. She has the complete support of all of the people in her office, as well as people that work within the county. And as what I've told you, she has the complete support of our community. Now, are there going to be some outliers that don't like her? Possibly, but we're very fortunate to have Miss Elder at $255,000, and my motion stands.
Commissioner Hetherington.
Agree with many of those comments, and we saw Luke Lambert was in the gallery today, and he was an excellent employee, and we lose our employees to the private sector, and in the private sector, the biggest competition is for their workforce. So I think it's fair. I think that Ms. Elder, you've done a great job, and I will support it.
Commissioner Vargas.
Yeah, I appreciate not being scolded anymore. I really appreciate it because I respect you and you will respect me also. So in the future, let's temper ourselves. I have a right to my opinion. If we're comparing with other counties that have millions of people in it, it is a different story, isn't it? And, by making aspersions about expenditures, this is what I heard during my campaign. People are not happy out there. And to say, well, it's okay to spend this amount of money, it's not your checkbook. You've been an employee. You talk about your companies, that's fine. As you said, this is not your real job. You have another job that you hold higher than this. So I stick by my statements. They are correct. And I voted for her, but I'm talking about the dollars. And unless you've been a business owner that has stayed up at night and doesn't know how to pay your employees and how to make your business work, then you don't really have the expertise.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. That motion passes 3-2 with Commissioners Vargas and Hurd dissenting. It brings us, congratulations. It brings us to the end of our meeting. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Vargas.
Yeah, I was going to say also, some people say they have 16 years of experience, when in reality, they have 1 year of experience repeated 20 or 16 times. And if the shoe fits, wear it.
Let me, before I go on to you, public comment. Would anyone from the public like to address us? Mr. Waters.
Tyson Waters. Again, I'm here on behalf of my client. I think there was a little bit of confusion when we left the meeting. My interpretation of Part 2, the future land use amendment, was that it was stipulated that we were denied. But I think there was some question as to whether or not we were officially denied or it's just kind of floating out there. So I just want to make sure that on the record, it's confirmed that we were denied essentially for both the text amendment as well as the future land use amendment.
Never took up the second.
Yeah, we never took up the hearing. It was my understanding that you didn't qualify for the future land use based on the text amendment failure.
But I think that would just be part of the denial, is that because we failed to meet all of those elements and thresholds, that for those reasons.
But we didn't have a hearing, so I don't know that we can issue a denial without a hearing.
We're still in the meeting, so that's why I came back to see, we're still in the meeting, so can we call that item up here and I think you have staff here to give the presentation, even as short as it may be, and just so we can have that vote?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
We will take up public hearing number 2, which is a future land use map amendment for the waterside parcel.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Clyde Doolin, Comprehensive Planning Administrator. I'll do an abbreviated, I'm sure I can't do it as well as Ms. Nobby, but this is CPA 2112, Future Land Use Map Amendment. It was requested by Lucido & Associates on behalf of Cantor 96th Street Investments and South Florida Gateway Industrial LLC.
Mr. Doolin, she's coming in if you want her to do it.
I'll go ahead and give you some, highlight the background that we covered in the text amendment. Previously, there was agricultural and industrial on the subject site, and the applicant proposed low density in their first application in 2021. Then there were changes in the surrounding industrial. And further changes in the proposed text, proposed future land use map amendment. And as you can see, this is an amendment request from agricultural to low-density residential on 396 acres. And the difference in the number of units possible is 19 versus 1,050, and that's assuming that the text amendment that you considered at an earlier public hearing would have been approved. Go ahead.
So this is an aerial location map of the subject property. Outlined in red is the waterside property that is the subject of the future land use map amendment. Just giving context for where the property is located. This is the existing future land use map of the subject property. The property outlined in red currently has an agricultural future land use designation. and the proposed future land use map in this application has that same red outline property with low-density residential. Going over the future land use designations in the immediate area, we can see again that the red outline property has an agricultural designation. To the north, there is the commercial waterfront future land use designation. Then those 5 lots that are south of Southwest 96th Street have an agricultural designation. The mobile home future land use and the estate density 2 units per acre on the north side of Southwest 96th Street. Then to the east, there's the residential estate density 2 units per acre, the agricultural ranchette future land use, which has a residential density of 1 unit per 5 acres, and the 250 acres of industrial in that freestanding urban service district. To the south is about 200 acres with an agricultural future land use. And then to the west is the rural lifestyle future land use that is part of the Three Lakes property, also known as Apogee, and the St. Lucie Canal. And part of staff's recommendation for denial with this future land use map amendment comes into the compatibility concerns that are outlined in the staff report with the surrounding land uses in the area. So in section 2.1 of the staff report, there are 4 criteria that are found in chapter 1 of the comprehensive plan. And these 4 criteria must be analyzed whenever there is a future land use map amendment request. And staff, during our analysis of these criteria, found that 1 out of the 4 criteria for a future land use map amendment had been met. And then there are 2 sections of Florida statute that provide different indicators or criteria to judge whether a future land use amendment discourages the proliferation of urban sprawl. And so during our staff analysis, in that first set of 13 indicators, we found that this amendment discourages the proliferation of urban sprawl under 6 of the 13 criteria found in Florida statute. And in that second set of criteria or indicators, staff found that this amendment discourages the proliferation of urban sprawl under 3 of the 8 criteria found in Florida statute. And in conclusion, staff recommends denial of the applicant's proposed future land use map amendment. This is due to the compatibility concerns, the sprawl criteria that we just saw on the previous slide, and the current lack of public facilities to serve an additional 1,050 residential units. And that is outlined in section 2.5 of the staff report. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Questions for staff? Applicant.
Tyson Waters again on behalf of the applicant. The notices were turned in for this hearing at the LPA meeting. I appreciate staff's review. We disagree with staff's analysis based on everything in our application and staff responses, but we do understand, given the fact that the text amendment was denied, that at this time it would not appear that we qualify for this land use amendment.
Any further comments, questions? Is there a motion? Sure, please come forward.
I didn't come here for this again, but. Why not? Just throw it out there. So I was playing with ChatGPT, James Crowley for the record. I was playing with ChatGPT, which is, I recommend everybody get one and put it on your computer. It's a phenomenal tool. It'll do rendered drawings. It'll do land planning. You can use it as a land planner. You can ask the county municipal code. It'll do everything for you. So I was asking about trailer homes, and I was messing around. And in 2007, you guys passed a no net loss mobile home. Have you guys followed up on that? No? Well, the numbers I came up with is that at that 2007, you passed it because you were losing a lot of homes. And there was around 6,000 mobile homes, and now you have about 2,500. And that's pretty aggressive, and they're losing, in Port Salerno, and a lot of those are in Port Salerno. There's 1,000 homes, probably 500 Port Salerno, Jensen Beach, Hope Sound, places where you know where they're mobile homes. You had 54 mobile home parks, now you have around 27. And so my estimates over the next 10 years, you're going to need about 5,000 mobile homes to catch up. And I just thought this was like universe talking to me because I'm seeing you guys deny the land use and thought maybe this is a great spot for a mobile home park. Well, I mean,
As many awful ones as good ones.
okay, I got to balance it out. Those are my comments.
Is there a motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation for denial.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board.
Mr. Crowley, would you like to address us on another matter during public comment?
Well, if I could just, 3-minute limit.
Yeah.
Would you like me to start or do you want?
Yeah, you're the only person left. And then we'll go to commissioner comments.
Okay, well, no.
You don't want to make any comments? Okay,
If you have any questions, that's why I came here. I just wanted to talk about that. I don't want to talk about.
okay. Commissioner Capps?
I'm good.
Okay, I have something that I want to bring up, and that is that, Commissioners, you are aware that in Port Salerno, there is the core properties in downtown Port Salerno, the residents who live around there are very opposed to development. They don't want any development to occur. And some of the development, it is allowable there, is 3-story apartment buildings. And I presume that this is the basis of most of their objections, is that they don't want to see really dense residential development there. So I've been trying to think of alternatives that are not development, but that also are attractions that neighbors might like to attend, to see in their neighborhoods. What do people want to do in their neighborhoods? Where are good examples of good neighborhood attractors? And so I was thinking about, my husband was an airline pilot, so I was able to travel all around the world. And one of the things that it is omnipresent pretty much everywhere and has been for thousands of years are neighborhood marketplaces.
That's true.
Aren't residential development. And they are the biggest attractors in some of the most memorable and most visited cities in the world. I was thinking pretty much all of the plazas in Spain, pretty much all of the piazzas in Italy, big open places surrounded by small businesses. I was thinking about Florence. If you've been to Florence, Ponte Vecchio.
Ponte Vecchio.
It's gorgeous. It's a bridge that has 2 and 3 stories of little
Stores, little shops.
little shops. I was thinking of the San Lorenzo market in Florence also. In Venice, the Piazza San Marco.
That's right.
In Venice, the Ponte di Rialto. Once again, it's a bridge, and it's a bridge that's filled with shops, and it's a destination. You don't go to these places without visiting these sites. In London, the Borough Market for food. You don't go to, when you go to Marrakesh, when you go to Tangier, you go to the Medina. If you go to Frankfurt or you go to Baden-Baden at Christmas time, and it's so cold, it's just miserable. And we, as Floridians, don't have proper winter wear. But you bet I'm going to the Chris Kringle Mart.
That's right, Christmas.
You know,
market.
and it's
Yep.
the same sort of thing. And the biggest one, the best example is Istanbul, the Grand Bazaar.
The Grand Bazaar is
So
fantastic.
I'm just thinking, is this something that we might like to consider for a possible use in some of our CRAs? I don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea, but I think it's an alternative to what people don't want. And you know how much I love regulations. And I would want these to be very regulated. I don't know what ability we have to regulate them, but at any rate, regulations are among my favorite tools. So it's just an idea that is an alternative to a use that is permitted that people hate. And I instead want the CRAs to be successful, and I want there to be attractive uses there that are enjoyed and perhaps loved. Commissioner Vargas.
You know, I think that is a wonderful, those are wonderful ideas to explore. I have been to all of the countries that you have spoken about. I know them very well. I lived in 3 countries, 3 continents, and worked there also. So I was able to really get into daily life. I think this might be something that we can take up and start looking at soon,
Good.
if not immediately.
Just reflect on it, Commissioners. That's all I'm asking. Commissioner Campy.
Thank you. I appreciate and like your idea. Are you speaking of a permanent market?
I think so.
And what do you recommend we do to take it from your announcement to, what would you like us to do?
I don't know. I want staff to consider how we might execute this vision, and I'm not sure. I've never contemplated something like this before. But I do know that we need an alternative to the status quo, and this is certainly an alternative. It has the potential to be wonderful. It also probably has the potential to be awful. But I think that's why we need to evaluate it.
It brings people together.
Yeah. I'd like to have a Medina in my backyard.
Something called Medina.
Yeah.
You know. So something to think about. I'll bring it back.
You can eat and shop.
Yeah, there's
Time's up for you.
food, there's jewelry sales, there's craft, there's food, there are all kind of marvelous uses that are possible. Ms. Elder.
Yes, I was just going to suggest that our office can work with growth management and the CRA to come up with a plan or some potential regulations and bring it back to the board as an agenda item to amend our LDRs and make it a permitted use with different parameters for the different CRAs if the board wants us to do that.
Sounds terrific.
I think if you're counting head nods, I'm nodding my head.
Okay. Those are my comments for today.
I like that comment.
Commissioner Campy.
I have no comments.
Commissioner Heatherington.
I'm all set today, thank you.
Mr. Donaldson.
I have just one item. While we were in our meeting today, our Public Works Department with the Coastal Division Artificial Reef sunk a ship off our coast.
Oh, wow.
It was, yes, on purpose. It was a freighter that had been in the Miami River for some time. It got cleaned up, and then in the event, it sunk around 2 o'clock, I think, today. But what is a note to it for me, anyway, for some of you perhaps? The ship, or the reef, we're calling it, has been officially named the Boo McCully Reef. And Boo McCully was a Fort Pierce resident for a very long time, and he was, and his company, McCully Marine, was the one who sunk all of our artificial reefs for a long time. And since he's passed away, we have not been able to find a contractor since that time. Hopefully we will, maybe with some luck with naming the ship after him, we will get back in the business. But
If they help us.
but anyway, it's a noteworthy individual who's helped us for a long time and in our coastal environment. And the state of Florida helped fund the project. Apparently nobody wanted the ship, and the group.
Does the ship have a storied past?
Yes, it does have. Well, it kind of fits Boo McCully because and the Summerlands and the rest of our contractors from that area up there. But yes, in fact, while they were cleaning the ship, they found I don't know how many kilos of cocaine that were hidden within some compartments. So yes, the ship has had a storied career, and but it's now in 180 feet of water off the coast. And I don't know if those are listening. It's 27 degrees north, 12.304 minutes, and 80 degrees west, 0.411 minutes. Ultimately, it will be published, but those who are scribbling down, they can go out there with their GPS and find it. 180 feet.
Whoa.
But the ship itself was 227 feet, so I'm sure it's occupying about 80 feet of profile. So.
You have something else also, right?
Yes, and the other thing was regarding, you asked a question about the North River Shores and,
You have 2 other things.
what's that? Yes, 2 others, so we'll do them, yes, they're the, thank you for that, Commissioner. It's the North River Shores dock you asked earlier in the day, and that Just to remind folks that our regulations on docks really shoulders along the shoreline in terms of shoreline protection zone and getting through. Once you get into the water, it's largely an issue with the DEP. Occasionally, we run into issues where people have concerns over riparian rights or and that sort of thing. And so in this particular case, the county is not a party to the disagreement over the dock. It's really a private matter between the HOA and the adjacent property owners who are concerned about its construction. So we really don't have a role into it. Our building department has certain guidelines issued by the state that if you meet certain criteria, they have to issue a building permit in accordance with its structural requirements. The location of the project is not something that in the water we regulate. The our regulations are really rely on the DEP. So in this particular case, it's a civil matter, and Ms. Elder can weigh in if there's anything else.
I think one of the allegations was the POA didn't have the authority to bring it forward. We looked, there are deeds to the association, so they own it outright. So they have the ability to bring the matter forward for a building permit, and if the residents don't want it, that's also an internal matter that they would have to sort out, in like civil court.
May I ask that your department craft a little paragraph or some language that we can use as a response so that people don't feel like we just did not respond?
Correct.
I just didn't know how to respond, especially when it was a legal issue.
We had two different questions. One was, can you stop it? And one was, they don't have the authority. So we already crafted language to the, can you stop it? And we can't. So we'll craft language to the other one and give it to all the aides. Absolutely.
I think that would be helpful.
And the last item, which is actually the most important, is related to the acquisition of, or the selling of the property in Palm City, which we've been under contract, and there's a potential delay in the closing while the purchaser secures their financing and has some issues regarding title, which we're fixing. I'm asking permission to allow us to grant the purchaser the ability to postpone our closing. In return, we're asking for a non-refundable deposit that would be provided to the county in the form of cash or a or service, so that we can keep the contract open. So with your permission, county administration, working with the legal department, will provide the purchaser the ability to close later than the deadline, extend the closing date. In return, we will secure a non-refundable deposit.
What is that amount of that deposit?
At least $30,000 is what we're looking for.
Mr. Campy.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Mr. Donaldson. Part of, though, is that I think, from what I understand, the funding for purchasing it is secured. There was an issue that one of the county's public sidewalks was constructed on a bit of the property, correct?
Well, that goes to when you did the surveys, that the property that we're willing to convey has part of our sidewalk on it. That's correct.
So it wasn't like it was just the potential purchaser saying, hey, I need more help. There was a little bit of a wrinkle in where the public sidewalks were, so it's like a mutual situation. But instead of just saying yes, we are opting to look for approximately $30,000 as a hard deposit.
And what's the postponement?
30 days, correct?
Approximately.
Mr. Vargas,
No, that was an old light.
you need a motion?
Move
No, I just
approval.
need- Yeah, that'll be fine, yes, if you can.
Move approval of that delay in the closing date
Yes.
that was described.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Anything else, Mr. Donaldson?
No, that's
Ms.
all. Thank you.
Elder? Anybody else?
Would you like that back?
We're adjourned.
All right.